Hmm. Hi. It's going to start. You can leave that open if you like. I don't know if anybody's. There's already 4 people signed up for the lunch dinner.
Wow.
If anybody signs up in the next hour and I'm doing this training, I won't be able to send them the link. Oh boy. I don't know if I can now because I've started one Zoom. I don't think I can. Maybe I can share the other Zoom link. Let me see if I can do that.
Yeah, but you sent it through your work email, right? Or no? Did you send it out to the other four? Or did you send it directly through Zoom?
What's that?
The email with the link.
Oh, I sent it through. Oh, yeah, I did. So yes,
You can send it.
that's right.
Forward it.
Good. Good thinking. Now I got you.
There's some rain stuff going on. Not a lot though.
Look at that though.
It hasn't been a fun morning.
Sorry to hear that.
Thanks to my kid.
Hey, Wendell. How's it going? I don't know if you have a microphone, but you can unmute it if you'd like. Or there's a chat window as well.
Okay, now it's on.
There you go. There you are. How you doing?
I'm doing fine.
Great.
My wife's on iPad there too. So,
Oh, really? I don't show anybody in here except you.
well, we're on the same email.
Oh, same account. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I don't see anybody else here, which is pretty.
Oh my!
I know a lot of people were asking me about the training and, trying to get information from me and links and stuff. So I don't know if they're just going to jump in late or if they're waiting for the recording. So this will be a personalized training just for you. And here's Doris.
There's Doris. Yeah.
Is that your wife? Oh,
Yes.
yeah. Tremble. I said the last name. Nice.
We've been working with kids for several years now.
Awesome. Where are you guys from?
We're from Lebanon, Oregon.
Oh, did you say Lebanon?
Lebanon, Oregon.
Lebanon, Oregon. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. I
Awesome.
guess we've been working with kids about 50 years now.
Did you say 50?
Yes, we're both 70.
Wow, that's awesome. That's great. I hope to say that when I'm 70.
Yeah, hope they help keep us from people don't think we're as old as we are because of being around the kids all the time.
It keeps you young. That's awesome. So are you guys using the curriculum with a...
We're going to start using it in September.
Uh-huh.
We teach what's called the junior church from 8 to 12-year-olds
That's great.
during the sermon time for about 40 minutes. So we'll probably use be about 1 year will probably turn into 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely can get 2 weeks of, if you're only meeting for 40 minutes, you can get 2 weeks of content easy out of.
Yeah, we have just about 15 to 18 kids a week.
It's a good number.
And so
It's great.
we're trying to get some more involved in the age group teaching.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of start, and we'll record this so that if there's other people, maybe they can get something from our conversation. So if you have 8 to 12-year-olds?
8 to 12-year-olds, yes.
So that's probably like 3rd through 6th or 7th?
Yes.
Okay. Good. Is it right now you have 15 to 20? Is it mostly on the older end or on the younger end, or is it pretty well spread?
It's pretty well spread. But the one thing that has turned in the years that we've been doing it, the last 3 or 4 years, is we've gone very strong to girls.
Uh-huh.
Before that, it was strong to boys. It was just the family dynamics.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing? And we've actually seen the opposite happen in the last few years in our ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I guess it's just the cycle of who's moving through, right? Like,
yeah.
That's interesting. All right. Well, I'm going to dive in. And what I did is on the screen, I hope you guys can see the folder that has all the different folders within the folder for lesson 1.
Yeah.
You can see that? Okay.
Yes.
And so I just, first of all, I want to kind of go through these things and just make sure there's, explain everything that's in here. So I'll start with the guides folder, and in the guides folder, there's lot of different ways that the lesson is split up, depending on what you're looking for. And for us, sometimes, we'll pull open one or we'll pull open another, or some are for emailing out. And so let me just talk about each of these. So the admin is basically your checklists, what supplies you need, things that need to be copied off. If you're just looking for that in a real quick space, you can just pull this open. And everything's done in color, but you can print it in black and white. So it's made so that it will work in both color and black and white. And so that's the admin. The all-in-one has everything. So it's got every other guide is included in the all-in-one. And if you were to print out the all-in-one, and we have a printer that will do this, that'll turn it into a booklet. But this is how thick it would be. This is what it would look like. And it's got everything. It's got all the other guides included in it. And then I'm going to skip the extended small group for a minute. The large group, that we actually do print that out each week, because that's what we take up to the podium that we're teaching from. And I usually print it single-sided so that I can just keep sliding the pages across as I'm going. And it's got the complete script in it with the slides down at the bottom. So in your environment, Wendell, do you guys have like media? Do you have like a projector?
We do have a projector that we use, and and also it has sound and stuff, but we
good.
operate it ourselves. Yeah.
So you're able to play videos and things off of that?
Yes.
Awesome. That's great. Okay, and then this one here, the Leader Prep and Devo, the idea is this is just a 2-page thing, and the idea is that you can send this to, if you have other leaders that are helping you, you can just email this one to them ahead of time, and it gives them an overview of what the lesson's going to be and a devotional that they can do personally for themselves. And then also for yourselves, I find these devotions really helpful for myself. We have a gal who's been in ministry. Do you know how long Heather's been? She's probably 50 years or so. And she does a great job with these devotions. And so they're just to kind of prepare our hearts for the lesson, and you can send them out to leaders as well. And then the small group guide, this is for your small group leaders, and it's just a 1-page, real quick look at what they're going to be doing in their small group time. So that's all the guides. And then you have these other ones that like there's an editable version, which you can take the Word document and cut it up however you want, so that, let's say you really want to chop up the lesson, you can go in there and use that. It's just a Word document that you can edit. Okay, so that's the guides folder. The Home Connect folder, there's 2 pieces. One is an email that you can send after the lesson. And if you open that lesson, or if you open that email and look at it, there's things that are highlighted yellow, and that's basically where you can put in like your ministry name or just things that are specific to your ministry. That's where you'd put them. And they also suggest, or it also suggests in that email, a picture that you include. And this email, the subject line is something like, photo of the week. Here, look at the preteens eating worms, or something like that, which will draw the parents to open the email to look at the picture, but it brings them into your service. I know that I'm not going to get every parent to come and sit and be in a service, but if I can take a picture or video and email it to them, it gives them a way to be in the service, and then also inform them about what the series is about, and what we're doing in our ministry. And then there's a take-home sheet, and this is a one-page thing that you can send home with the preteens to help them extend the lesson. So that's that Home Connect piece. The slides is simply that. It's just all the slides. It's put into a PowerPoint format, and then if you want to just like look at all the slides on a single document, that's what this does here, the slide viewer. And then you just have all your slides numbered. You can drop those into whatever program you're using. So what do you guys use for to put pictures? Do you use PowerPoint or ProPresenter or something like that, Wendell?
We're using PowerPoint.
PowerPoint, okay. Yeah, so you have right here a document which has all the PowerPoint slides for you. So you just open it up and it's all in order there. Okay, so that's that. And then you have videos here, which for this first lesson, there are 2 videos. There's a 1-minute timer for the game. And then there's also the video that's for the contest. And I'm actually going to open that, and we'll watch that a little bit later on as we go here. So I'm not sure actually if you'll be able to hear audio. This is the first time I'm trying this, so we'll see if that works. Okay, so on your screen, are you still seeing the folder right now?
Yes.
Okay, so let me switch that over so that you can see the slides. Bam, there you go. Do you see Mind-Blowing Awesomeness now?
Yes, do now.
Okay, great. All right, so what I want to do is look at the all-in-one, and of course you can look at this digitally, but for me it's just easier to print it out and go through it. But in the all-in-one, what you have is the first page gives you an overview of what the whole series is about. Actually, you know what? I'm sorry, this is my first time doing this. Thank you for your grace. Let me actually pull it open on the computer so you can see. I think that might be easier. Okay, do you see the all-in-one cover there on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So what we have here is the all-in-one, which is everything. And the first page gives you an overview of the whole series. So for this series, for Mind-Blowing Awesomeness, it's 4 weeks, which is typical for the series in the Deeply Rooted curriculum. And the main point is that preteens will stand in awe of God's mind-blowing awesomeness as they experience 3 things: his omnipotence, his omnipresence, and his omnibenevolence. So God is all-powerful, God is present in all places, and he's always good. Those are the 3 key truths that we're going after, and we want them to experience that and stand in awe of God's, to have their minds blown a little bit by who God is. And next to that, you see this image of the roots right here. So each month in a quarter has 3 components. You have a roots, and then which is the experiential thing. And then you have a transformation, which is we show fruit on that. And so how do these things transform us? That's what we'll be doing next month. And then the 3rd month is a discipleship piece. And that's like a picture of a branch, because it's like your shoots, you're growing stronger with discipleship. So those 3 again are experience, transformation, and discipleship. And this month is really focused on experiencing God, preteens experiencing God for themselves. Preteens are at an age where they can move from knowing about God to knowing God. And there's a difference, right? There's a difference between knowing about Jesus and actually knowing him in a personal way. And preteens, their brain development, they're at a point where they can move from knowing about God to actually knowing God for themselves, and it not being, this is my parents' religion, but this is what I believe. This isn't just what my parents believe. So this month, you can see that the 4 weeks are laid out there. And then this is what you're sending out to leaders on that 2-page document. It's an overview of today's lesson, which today's lesson, this first one, is really just getting them to see that God is bigger and more amazing than they have imagined in the past. That God is mind-blowing, and to really whet their appetite that they would want to seek God. And the idea with this is to set the tone for the whole year or 2 years or however long they're with you, that church is not boring, God is not boring, God is exciting, and this is like this never-ending quest that we can go on to learn more and more about who God is and to experience him in deeper and deeper ways. And then you see this leader prep and devotional on the next page. The next page shows you all the different elements that are included in the basic lesson. This doesn't include the extended small group. So if you add in the extended small group to this, you end up with about 3 hours of content. And from that, you might feel overwhelmed if you try to look through it all and you're like, I want to do all of it. And the next page is really to help you figure out what elements to use. So you guys said you have a 40-minute service.
Yes.
So these are the elements that we would suggest. And these little icons correspond with, I'm going to go back now to these little icons here. So you can see first is the lesson intro right there. And then we've got the large or the small group number 1. And then it looks like we're going into the lesson. So we're skipping over some of these other pieces, the mystery challenge, etc. However, you can, pick and choose. Okay, no, we're not going to do this piece. Instead, we're going to do this piece here and, pick and choose. But this is to help people so that you don't have to, feel overwhelmed with the amount of content that we're providing for you. And then there's the supplies and prep. And this gives you a checklist. And again, it's got the same little icons. So you can look at whatever pieces you're doing. Those are the only sections that you need to prepare for. Okay, and then as the kids arrive, we give you 4 activities each week that you can do that will tie into the theme of the lesson, and you can use this as a great time. It tells you here, this is a great time to build relationship with your preteens as they're arriving using the pre-service thing. So this first week, there's a sweet and salty ocean snack, which is basically goldfish and Swedish fish. Goldfish, Swedish fish, and popcorn mixed together with a little bit of blue Jello powder. So it's like this oceany, sweet and salty ocean is what we call that snack. And then the game Sharks and Swimmers, where it's just an active game. And you'll notice that each week that there's an active game and then a less active game. And on Sharks and Swimmers, you have somebody stand in the middle. They're the shark. Everybody else is the swimmer standing on the side. And when the shark says swim, everybody tries to run across, and whoever gets tagged, they become a shark for the next round until everybody becomes a shark but one person, and that person gets to start off the next round as the shark, the last person to be tagged. And then there's a kind of a sit-down game where they're using their feet, and you can read these directions here, but basically they're using their feet to pull marbles out of a kiddie pool. And then finally, build an ocean. This craft is one of my favorite in the whole 2 years. And my 6th grade daughter made one back in 4th grade when we were beta testing this. And we had it probably a year and a half, this craft that she created. And basically they're making an ocean in a bottle. So it's all pretty self-explanatory. And again, if you ever have any questions about any of these crafts or activities or snacks, you can email us or call us, and we're happy to help you. If you're like, I don't get it, what's this thing? But I really want to do it, but I just don't know what it is. Okay? So let's get into the lesson here. And at this point, what I'm going to do is I have a printout of the large group lesson. So I'm going to switch over so you can see the slides. And I'm just going to move through the lesson. And if you only have 40 minutes, you may choose not to use some of these pieces. But at least this way you can kind of get a sense of what the whole lesson looks like from beginning to end. So first of all, welcome to Elevate, which is our preteen ministry. We're excited to have you here. And we are starting a new series called Mind-Blowing Awesomeness. And this is going to be a series that helps us change the way that we see who God is. As I was getting ready for this series, I saw this video, and I want to show it to you guys. I think you'll see why this video, why when I thought mind-blowing awesomeness, why this video was perfect. And at that point, you can show the video, which is not popping up on my screen for some reason. Oh, here it is. Okay, does everybody see that video?
Yes.
Okay, now what I'm not sure is if you'll be able to hear it. So let me play it and tell me, you can tell right away if there's music playing or not. Do you hear that?
No.
No music? Okay, let me try it this way.
Yes.
Can you kind of hear it?
No. I thought it was going to, but I can't
No?
hear it.
Can't hear it. No? Yes or no? No.
No.
Okay. All right, so I'll basically tell you the gist, and you can watch it because it's in the videos folder. But basically, it's the world's worst preteen singer contest. This guy here, his name is Brian Seacrest, and he is explaining that he's looking for the world's worst preteen singing group. And about I don't know, 5 times in the video, he uses the word, he says mind blowing, because he's looking for somebody who can blow his mind with their awful singing. And so it's really just a fun way of getting the kids engaged with thinking about blowing somebody's mind, like surprising them. And there's some example of some kids in this thing that are just like some preteens from other churches that participated 2 years ago when we did this contest. And their singing is horrendous, but it's on purpose. It's purposeful singing. There's a couple different reasons why we do this worst preteen singers contest. One is to just get your kids engaged in, in something that even a kid who's never been to church, they can sing awful. The second reason that we do it is to make it a safe place, to show that your ministry is a safe place to just be silly and to sing awful. And, this is a place where we can laugh together and even laugh at each other in a friendly, not insulting way, but we can just have fun together. And the third thing is to help them see that what you're doing at your church isn't just happening there, but there are preteens all over the country and all over the world that are a part of this thing that we're doing called preteen ministry, called church. So what happens is on week 1, you watch the video and kind of introduce this contest. And then you say, all right, how do we want to do this? Do we all want to sing together, or do we want to have like people, try out, and next week we pick somebody who we think is the worst preteen singer? And then week 2, you videotape it and send it in. And then what we do is we allow the churches on week 3 to vote for who they think is the worst preteen singer. So we narrow it down to 5 of all the ones that we receive, and we put those 5 out there, and your group votes. And if your group wins, if somebody from your group is the world's worst preteen singer, then your church, your preteens get a pizza party paid for by 456 and Deeply Rooted Curriculum. So that's kind of a fun little element, and it's a great way to kind of open up the lesson, to open up the series, is with that world's worst preteen singer contest. All right, I want to check in and make sure everybody's seeing the slide on the screen. Is that what you're seeing, the preteen singer contest? Wendell, is that what you're seeing?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, cool. So it's just kind of a fun way to open up your series and open up the service, and it gives you a way of engaging with other people who are using the Deeply Rooted Curriculum. Okay, so each week during this series, we're going to start off with something called the Mystery Challenge. And our Mystery Challenge, the way the Mystery Challenge works is that I need a volunteer who is willing to come up here and do whatever. We don't know what the Mystery Challenge is until after you volunteer. So you might be volunteering to eat something or wear something. You don't know what it's going to be until you come up. And so you call up your volunteers and you say, okay, today's Mystery Challenge is a drop in the bucket. And the game is explained there in the page there, but basically you have buckets or some kind of larger receptacle in the front of the room. You have 2 of those, and then in the back of the room you also have buckets, but they're filled with water. And then you have little eye droplets that they're using to move the water from the back to the front, and they're in teams. You can color the water, so you have blue and red, just to make it more interesting. And they're moving from the back to the front. If you have a small enough group, you could actually have all the boys versus all the girls and hand out a few eyedroppers. And you can change the rules a little bit so that everybody's involved. Like, you have to pass the eyedropper to 3 people on the way up, and give them a chance to plan before you hit the timer, the 1-minute timer, to go on that. Okay, so that's the Mystery Challenge. And then we get into the lesson. Now, for those of you that have short time, you may say, I just want to skip ahead, and get going with the intro. And that's totally fine. If your time is really short, you don't have time for some of these other things, you might just jump right ahead to the intro. All right, so in the lesson intro, you're saying, I want to be honest with you. I'm still thinking about that worst preteen singer contest. When I first saw the video, I was a little bit confused. When I think of mind-blowing, I don't usually think of mind-blowingly awful. I usually think of something that is awesome, something that blows my mind. For instance, and then you can give an example, a personal example of a time when your mind was blown. Maybe it was a sunset, or maybe it was a YouTube video that you're like, what? I didn't know that was possible. Video is really great for preteens. So if you can bring in a video, I have an idea there with a link to a YouTube video. It's a guy that's juggling hammers, and he's able to hammer in a nail that's in the roof with hammers. It's pretty awesome. It's pretty mind-blowing. And so you can say, what's mind-blowing to you? And then after you've given an example, get the preteens to give examples. So Wendell, can you think of something that blows your mind?
Oh, let's see.
While you're thinking about it, Deanna or Mimi or Doris, if you want to unmute your mic, do you have something that just absolutely blows your mind? For me, it's like the stars at night. It just blows my mind to think that each one of those is bigger than the sun, or, you know, that there's these huge suns out there, that the sky is so vast. It blows my mind. I can't quite wrap my mind around it. Okay, who has an example? Who else has an example? Something that blows your mind.
I guess just seeing the forest or the greatness, how expansive the ocean is, or the forest.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's great. Yeah. And you know your group right now, you know that they may be hesitant to get involved. And if you know that your kids are like that, you can prep a couple leaders ahead of time, or even a couple of kids, to get the conversation rolling. Now, once you do that, you won't have to do that later on. But if you know, hey, our group isn't accustomed to answering questions like that in the middle of a lesson, they're used to just sitting there. And if I ask a question, I probably get no response. Then go ahead and prep a few leaders or kids ahead of time to get that process started. So you could say, who has examples? And you know you're going to get 3 hands right away. I did this one. I went to speak at the Prime Timers. It was like our 60 plus or 50. What was it at first, Jamie? It was 60 plus? 55 plus. And I knew if I asked for volunteers for a game that I might not get anybody to come up. So I asked a couple of people ahead of time. I said, hey, if nobody raises their hand, will you help me out and do this? And so sure enough, nobody raised their hand, but I wasn't standing there like stuck, not able to move forward. I had these people already, they were plants in the audience, but nobody knew they were plants. Okay, so you know your group. If you know that you're going to get dead stares, then talk to some leaders and kids ahead of time. Okay, there's a little tip for you. All right, so now let's go the opposite. Let's go the opposite of mind-blowing awesome. Let's go to something that you think is boring. Now, I think this white square is boring. I think just looking at a white square. In fact, I have one right here. Here it is. It's just a white square. I can't think of anything that's much more boring than that. Just a plain white square. Boring, right? The opposite of that, of course, is mind-blowing. And here's a picture of something that I think is mind-blowing. It's a double rainbow. Have any of you ever seen a double rainbow? You know, woo, yeah. You know, there are so many mind-blowing, amazing things in this world that David, a lot of you know who King David from the Bible, but King David, we read about him in the Bible. He saw so many mind-blowing things that he wrote this. It's in Psalms 45. Who would be willing to read this for us? Somebody that can unmute their microphone. First person to do it. Ready? Go.
Okay, I'll do it.
All right, Mimi's on it.
Lord, my God, no one can compare with you. You have done many wonderful things. You have planned to do these things. I'm missing a word there.
For us. For us. Oh, is your screen not showing it all?
There are too many of them for me to talk about. So
wow. There's too many things, too many mind-blowing things for David to talk about. In other words, King David's seen so many amazing things in his life. There are more than he could count. So let me ask you guys. Now we've talked about boring, and we've talked about mind-blowing. So some of you have shared already something that's mind-blowing. Does anybody else have something that's mind-blowing to them? Something you've seen that you're like, whoa.
Well, I think mine would be going to the Grand Canyon and going to see Niagara Falls, things like that, just nature.
Awesome. Yeah, creation is amazing, isn't it? Creation is amazing. All right, now let me flip the question around. What is boring? But instead of telling me right here in the large group, we're going to split into small groups. And if you have a small group already, you can say boys over here, girls over there. Or you can just have these hung up on the wall because you need at least 6 for the illustration. So you can have 6 hanging up and challenge all your kids to write one boring thing on each of them if your group's small enough. In our group, we had about 80, 90 last night. So we would split them into small groups and give each small group a boring white square. And you say, instead of telling me right here what's boring, you're going to go to your groups and write on a boring white square with a black boring Sharpie. You're going to write down everything you can think of that's boring to you. That's pretty easy for most preteens. They can think of something that's boring to them. And by the way, if you bring back just a blank white square, that's not boring to me. You're being creative by doing that. So that's interesting. So don't come back with a boring white square. We're going to see which group can come up with the most boring things on their square. Ready, go. So then you send them off to write on the squares, and they'll come back with all sorts of things. What do you think would be number 1 on this with your preteens? What do you think all the squares will have on it? School? Right? Okay, good. So anyway, so they come back, and now you'll collect 6 of them. And the idea is that you have a leader who's going to take those 6 and either in the room or outside the room, if you feel it's going to be too distracting, they're going to take 6 of these squares and with it build a boring box. So this is a boring box. It took me about 15 minutes to create. I basically laid them out in the form of a cross on the ground, taped them into a cross, 6 squares, if you can imagine, 4 down and then 2 across, and then you can roll it up and tape it together. If you're concerned that you're not going to be able to do that quickly enough, you could have a box already built and just take their boring squares and attach it to the outside of the square that you already have. Okay? So while that's going on, now you're doing the teaching. So let me get into that. So the question was, what is boring? And you guys had some great answers. Here's some of the things I saw written on your square. I saw somebody write school, and you can even hold up a couple squares that they have in their small group and say, wait, you guys think that movie, you guys think that princess movies is boring? Or whatever they write. And they'll come up with all kinds of things. So I'm actually going to write something on my square. Okay, here we go. I'm writing it down now. And I'm going to show you. Here it is. Can everybody see what I wrote? What do you guys think of me writing that? Do you think that's true, that God is boring? What do you think? Now, with your preteens, what we've seen when we've done this lesson is that they will no, right? They'll be like, what? God's not boring. They'll object. But what you're doing is you're drawing them into them defending God themselves. Instead of you doing it like we normally do, right? We stand up and tell them. We're getting them to defend that God isn't boring. And after they've provided that defense, you say, wait, why don't you guys think God should be on here? And then they'll share all their answers. You say, yeah, I want you to know that I don't really think that God is boring. Not in the least. I think God's amazing and wonderful and mind-blowing. The reason I wrote God on here is because there are some people who do think of God as boring. And that's what we're going to talk about, okay? I want to talk about that for a minute. Why do you suppose there are people who think that God is boring? Why do you think that is? So then you get some answers from them. You're engaging them and thinking about, why people think that. So let me give you guys an illustration that's going to help you to understand why some people think that God is boring, okay? So what is this picture of right here? This is the ocean. Now let's say I go down to the ocean, and is the ocean boring? The ocean is not boring at all, right? I mean, it's full of life. Waves are constantly pounding against the shore. The tide is rising and falling. The depths of the ocean are incredible. The power of the ocean is undeniable. The ocean is anything but boring. But let's say I went to the ocean to capture some of its greatness and its beauty, and I wanted to capture this big blue mind-blowing ocean and bring it home with me. So then you hold up a Tupperware container that just has water. That's it. It's just got a Tupperware container full of water. Now, what do you think of this? And the smaller the Tupperware container, the better, because what you're basically going to have is like a little container of water. And you can just do this from your tap, right? What do you think of this? Is this mind-blowing? Not really, okay? But if I try to capture the awesomeness of the ocean in a small container, this is all I can capture. I've taken that which was mind-blowing, the ocean, and made it look boring. What's the problem here? What's the problem here? The problem is this: the greatness of the ocean cannot be contained in a small Tupperware container, right? The greatness, the mind-blowingness of the ocean can't be held in this little tiny container. What does this have to do with God? Well, look at these two verses and think about that for a minute. Okay, here's the first verse. Would somebody read this for us? Michelle, I think you have a microphone that's working, yeah?
Yeah, I can read it.
Thanks.
My thoughts are not like your thoughts, and your ways are not like my ways, announces the Lord. The heavens are higher than the earth, and my ways are higher than your ways. My thoughts are higher than your thoughts.
All right, so let's look at one more here. Is there somebody who'd be willing to read this for us? Just unmute your microphone if you're willing to read it for us. Thank you, Heather.
But will you really live on earth? After all, the heavens can't hold you. In fact, even the highest heavens can't hold you. So this temple I've built certainly can't hold you.
Yeah. So think about this small Tupperware container I have to try to contain the mind-blowingness of the ocean. It's kind of like our mind. See, First King tells us that the sky and even the highest heavens can't contain God. And we saw in Isaiah 55, 8, and 9 that God's ways and thoughts are higher than our ways and thoughts. Our brains cannot possibly understand everything there is to understand about God because he's so amazingly big and glorious and awesome. It's truly mind-blowing. But see, here's what people do. They go to God, they learn one truth about him, and they think that that is enough. But just putting one truth about God in your mind and then thinking that that's enough is like scooping up this much of the ocean and bringing it home with you. You're taking something mind-blowing and making it look boring because the container is too small to see how truly awesome it actually is. I'm going to pause for a minute and have you think about this. Check out this picture of the ocean while you sit there and silently consider God's mind-blowing awesomeness in our little minds. Okay? So right now in your minds, you have some ideas about God. But does the whole truth about God fit into your mind according to the scripture we've read? Does the whole truth about God fit into your mind? No. That's what I just heard you all shout. It doesn't. If the sky and the highest heaven can't contain God, then why would anybody think that they know everything there is to know about God? There is so much more to the ocean than I have in here, and there's so much more to God than what I have in here, in this container. The only way people think that God is boring is if they stop looking for him or when they don't spend time with him. God's glory, his greatness is unending, and we can't even begin to get close to seeing everything there is to see about him. The greatness of God, his glory is so amazing, it would actually blow your mind if you were to see all of it. Check out this story from Exodus 33, 18 to 23. And then you read that story in there. And so you would have your Bible marked at Exodus. You have your Bible marked with Exodus 33, 18 through 23. And you see how God says that no one can see you and live. Nobody can see all of God because he's so gloriously mind-blowing. Moses was only allowed to see God's back because seeing more than that would have killed him, right? Because God is so amazing, we can't contain him. But it wasn't just Moses. When people catch just a glimpse of God's mind-blowing awesomeness, like Stephen, he looked up into heaven and saw just a small piece of God's amazingness. And even though people were stoning him, he forgave them. Like he's just sitting there happy, even though he's being hurt, because God's glory is so amazingly mind-blowing. The people of Israel, they just bowed down and worshiped and gave thanks to God when they saw God's glory. Moses' face actually started glowing so bright that people were afraid to come near him after he spent a little time with God. Hey guys, God is so mind-blowing, so awesome, that when we spend a little time with him and get just our brains full of him, it's amazing. It's mind-blowing. And that's what I want. The kind of heart-changing, awe-filled wonder that makes me a different, glowing, bowing down and worshiping person. I want to see more of God than I already do. How many of you feel that way too? How many of you feel that way too? Yeah? Right. Okay. So here's the thing. You're getting older. And then you pull out a bigger Tupperware container, right? So as you're getting older, your minds are growing. Your minds were this size and they're going to this size. You're able to handle more in your brains than you were a year ago or 2 years ago. So if you maybe filled up your mind with God 2 years ago, let's see what happens. If we take that and pour it into this bigger container, look at all this empty space we have now, right? You're going to feel empty if you don't continue seeking God. And you're going to feel like, yeah, God isn't that big of a deal. Well, your minds are growing, so you're ready for more of God as your minds grow. If you don't continue seeking God, then you won't know everything that you can. And it'll leave you feeling kind of empty. So is there more room in this container for more of the ocean? You hold up the bigger container, right? And you say, is there room for more of the ocean? Yes, there is. Now, is there more room in this container, in your containers, for more of God? Yes, there is. Awesome. So I think it's time. I think that this season, this year in whatever your ministry is, this year in Elevate, we're going to be about filling up our containers with God, with the mind-blowingness of God. Let's go to the ocean and dive into the big blue mind-blowing depths of who God is. In John 10:10, Jesus said he came for us to have a boring life. No, that's not what Jesus said. He said, I have come that they may have abundant life. Our minds are growing, so let's fill up our growing minds to the brim with the exciting truth of who God is. Now, at this point, your volunteer would come out with the boring box, okay? And so here's the boring box, and you'd say, okay, I'm reading some of the boring things you guys wrote on here. School, babysitting my younger brother, I don't know, whatever kind of things they wrote on the boring box. Now, if you can have school days that are boring or summer days that are boring or any time in your life is boring, you know that spending time with glorious, amazing God is not boring, right? How many of you think that I should add God to this boring box? Anybody think that? No, I wouldn't think so. In fact, you know what happens when we spend time with God? It crushes this boring box. Spending more time with God crushes the boring out of our life. If you're bored in life, God is the cure. God is the opposite of boring. He is mind-blowingly awesome. So let's wrap this up. Is God boring? No. Is there more for us to learn about God than we have already seen? Yes. Okay, then I need a volunteer to come up here and creatively crush the boring box. Is there somebody who'll come up here and just destroy this boring box as a way of showing what we're going to do this year and Elevate in our preteen ministry? So there'll be some rambunctious kid who would love to come up and jump all over it. Yeah. If you go to our closed, deeply rooted Facebook group, we have a video from last year, one of the churches that did the beta testing 2 years ago, actually. She's got this great video of her kid coming up and jumping on it and like tearing it to pieces. And the other kids are like cheering him on as he's tearing up the boring box. So make sure you don't get too rambunctious a kid, right? That would be a point where you'd want to be careful who you choose. But you don't want somebody that's just going to come up there and tear it apart lightly. You want somebody who's going to crash it. Okay, so let's pray. So then you have a chance to pray. And then from there, you go into response stations. So let me switch back. And if you didn't watch the thing about response stations that we did last week, I sent you a link. Hopefully you've got that. If not, let me know. Because response stations are a huge part. You don't just teach the preteens, but you give them a chance to respond in their own ways to what you've shown them. So you can read through these, or you can watch the training from last week about response stations. But this is set up around your room and give your preteens now a chance to respond on their own, in their own way, to what they've just learned about God. Okay? And we wrap up our response time with in Elevate with a worship song, and then with what we call our reveal window. And in the reveal window, you have these cards that are in the printable stuff, and you hand them out, and there's 2 questions that we're asking. What is God showing you through today's lesson, and what questions do you still have? And that forms the basis for your second small group time. So in the first small group time, they're writing on their boring squares, right? And on the second small group time, now they're talking about what God's revealed to them and the questions they have. I'll tell you what, when you don't do much more than that in your small groups, you're still going to have about 20 minutes of small group time. 10 minutes to talk about what's boring and write it down, and 10 minutes to discuss their cards. Wednesday night, we always ask those two questions in Elevate. We ask, what's God revealing to you? What questions do you have? And we ran out of time. The preteens, when they're asked to engage and asked to teach, instead of you retelling them the points or asking your questions, giving them a chance to ask their questions and to share what they are learning, you'll be amazed at how much better those conversations go with them. Okay? So that's kind of the lesson. There is this extended small group, which is another, 30 to 60 minutes, which you can use if you have like a second service. You can come back and use this extended small group. It's its own kind of curriculum, but it's completely just taking the lesson and retelling it in a different format altogether. Okay? All your principles are in the back, the reveal cards, and then the Psalm 19. This is for one of the response stations. If you choose to use response station number, which one is it? Oh, number 3, where they're reading the Psalm and then drawing a picture at the bottom of something mind-blowing in creation. Okay? So I want to open it up to questions. Before I do, I want to let you know in about 10 minutes, we're doing something called the Launchinar. And if you have not done the Launchinar before, I'd highly recommend it. Patrick Snow from Superstart, he comes and talks about the bike, the whole idea of the brain development of preteens and how we can help them to start to own faith for themselves. And then we also talk about what the most important thing in preteen ministry is. And then beyond that, you get plugged into a peer group that you'll meet with for the next 3 months to talk through how your preteen ministry launch is going. It's a discussion group. There's training, but then there's discussion also with that. So if you are interested, you can sign up for that. It's like $19, but it covers the cost of all of our speakers that come in, including Patrick and some of the others that will come in throughout the month, the 3 weeks of the peer group. So if you're interested in that, you can go to 456.org and click on community and peer groups and sign up for that. Okay, so questions. Oh, somebody has a question, it looks like. Did you start early today? Oh, you mean with the building the square? Oh, no, it was supposed to be 9? Was it supposed to be 9:30? Serious? Then I did start early. Oh my goodness. I'm going to send you the recording for it. I apologize. I had on my calendar 9. I'm so sorry. I was wondering why there were only 2 people at the beginning. All right. Any other questions? Okay.
Can I
Great.
verbally ask a question?
Yes, go ahead, Heather.
So after watching the response stations and trying to get all our stuff together, I was wondering, when we've done response stations in the past, we've had a sheet like explaining to the kids written down.
Yeah.
You guys create those at all, or do we just take, if we want to do that, we just take the wording from the curriculum and make a sign?
Yeah, you could do that, Heather.
Yeah.
I've found that if I walk around and explain the stations, it takes like 2 minutes.
Okay.
And then the kids can jump right into responding as opposed to going around and trying to figure out what's happening here and do I want to do it.
Okay. They're pretty good about not asking you questions constantly.
No, yeah, because it's really simple. I mean,
Okay.
if you explain clearly what's happening and then let them go, then they can jump right into responding.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so I am going to send you the link. If you're typing a question, go ahead. If you have other questions, you can email me or call us. And I am going to send you a link to watch the whole video because apparently I started a half an hour early. Let's see here. Oh, thank you for the encouragement, Deanna. The material is just a little overwhelming, but I can assume that we pick and choose. Yes. Let me show you here. I showed this earlier on in the training, but this page right here, can you guys see that page right there that's on the screen? It says service planning. If you are like, I've only got 40 minutes with them, this shows you which elements we recommend to use. The little pictures correspond with the pictures on the previous page. So you go to the previous page, you can put these side by side and look at like, okay, we're going to do, what's that? Lesson intro, and then what's that? Small group 1, and then lesson. So you kind of see that. And that way you don't have to look at all the material. You can just narrow it down and look at the pieces that you're going to be using and throw out the rest. Don't even look at it, because if you look at it, you might want to use it and you don't have time. Are the response stations the same from week to week? No, they're different. There are some that carry through. So like the waves with the water droplets, that one I would use all month long. In fact, we're going to use that all month long. And if you find that there's a response station that the kids really dig, by all means, like keep using that one. And if you watched last week's training, I would totally go into those response stations a little bit more. But one of the things that I recommended is get to know your kids. If you have a lot of artistic kids, then come up with some other artistic response stations. And it varies from year to year. There'll be years where I have a bunch of really like rambunctious boys. And so we'll do more like, take this nail and hammer it into the wall, or, build with Legos, and like one of the response stations a little bit later this month is to take a Lego from the back of the room to the front of the room. And each time you do, you're telling something good about God or something like that, so they take it and then they go up front and they build with it and they come back and get another Lego. But the whole way they're walking, they're talking to God. They're like praying as they're moving between the building and the grabbing. So all different kinds of ways of getting people to respond. Okay, any other questions? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and shut this down. Again, if you have any questions as you're going through the series, I will say there's one thing I think you should look ahead at. It's in lesson 3, and it's the Magnificent Macaroni. It's a little illustration at the beginning. It takes a little bit of prep and practice to make it happen, but we've done it, and it's really cool when you can pull it off. There's an audio file that comes with it that narrates the Magnificent Macaroni. Basically, it's a stunt show, and you're doing the stunt show in your space, and you have a preteen who is the Magnificent Macaroni, so you can come up with a costume for them. And their motorcycle, which is just a broom or something, they're using to jump over, small things on the floor, but they represent like flaming buses, and they're jumping over it with their motorcycle. And so you get the leaders involved, and the kids will start cheering for the Magnificent Macaroni, even though it's this ridiculous thing that's happening up front. But it's really powerful for if you use that, it becomes this hook for talking about how God can do any of it. God, when we get into the lesson about his omnipotence. So there you go. Do you have a link for the group you mentioned? What? Oh, it's on Facebook. Let me get that link for you. I got it right here, as a matter of fact. There's the link for the Deeply Rooted curriculum page. And you just have to ask to be added. But then when you get in there, it's a great place to put like song ideas, or like, hey, for this lesson, I'm doing this instead of macaroni, I'm using, or hey, does anybody have a solution if you can't find eyedroppers? Or, if you have questions about things, you can put it in there too. Also, please post your pictures and videos. I love when, like for instance, with the boring box, if you get a bunch of pictures of that and we put that on there, it's really neat to see on that Deeply Rooted curriculum page. Okay, I have to go because it's time for the Launchinar in 4 minutes. And again, if you want to sign up for that, just go to 456 .org and go under online training. Actually, here, let me get you the link for the Launchinar if you are interested in joining that. The Launchinar with Patrick Snow. There we go. So you can go there and sign up, and that gives you like 3 months of a peer group as well as the training, which is happening here momentarily. Okay? So I will close with that, and God bless you guys. I'm so excited about finally launching this. We have around 90 churches that are already signed up to use this curriculum, and we're just getting started. So super excited about that. And I'll talk to y'all later.